like drop in as soon as that countdown goes to zero. You know what I mean?
Of course, I lost the light as soon as you push the count.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we are thrilled to have a remarkable guest join us on today's episode. Please join me in welcoming Brian Jenkins, a highly esteemed relationship coach who has dedicated his life to helping individuals and couples overcome obstacles, create thriving connections, and find true fulfillment in themselves and in intentional union. Get ready for an enlightening discussion as we delve into the secrets of building and sustaining healthy, joyful partnerships. This episode promises to be a source of embodiment, commitment, and humor, inspiring you all to deepen your relationships with others and yourself. I'm truly honored to have Brian join us on After the Peaks. So without further ado, let's drop into the episode. Brian, thank you for being here.
Yeah. Great introduction. I was wondering who this guy is you're going to invite on. I wanted to hear him speak up.
So I want to start with a quote. Be who you are and say what you feel, because those who mind don't matter and those who matter don't mind.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Dr. Seuss.
mm-hmm.
You want to talk a little bit about that quote? How does that speak to you?
Yeah, man. Well, it speaks to my core. It speaks to the part of me who, has been protecting his image for since I, as far as I can remember, being very mindful of people's opinions, um, how their perception of me, of what I'm doing, how I'm showing up. Do they find me competent? Do they find me to be funny, charismatic? Do they trust me? And really getting lost in that. So really hearing that is a firm reminder of the path that I'm still on to make sure I show up as authentically in my expression as possible. So yeah, I actually brought up. I love the childish play of Dr. Seuss as well. It felt kind of like that kid that wants to come out and just be, because kids don't overthink it. Kids just be. They're not worrying about who's looking, what's going on. They just do. So yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, and too, I'm talking to, talking to you. Humor, I think, is a big part of your life. And I first found you actually on the Rising Man podcast back in 2019. I think it was the April episode, and it was you were already in Spain, and you had really leaned into the calling of kind of walking away from, say, a perfect life in the States, where you had your MBA from London, you were gainfully employed with your own business, you had everything going for you in the States, but yet there was something calling to you where you went international,
Mm-hmm.
and you went to Spain. So in respect of relationships to others, I'd like to first talk about the most important relationship of them all, which is your relationship to yourself.
Yeah, man.
Okay. And your relationship to yourself, you listened. Can you kind of walk us through that time in your life where maybe there was some ambivalence, right? You had all this
Mm-hmm.
stuff going on, and there were these contradictions where it's like, oh, I can't picture myself living an international life. I have to be this person. I'm required to be here.
Mm. Damn, B Quigs, you're going right for the good stuff. I like it. So, um, my first reaction was going to say I didn't hear the calling. It was more of a practical decision. And the practical decision was at that time, my ex girlfriend was doing a master's in MBA. I'm sorry, a master's in London. And I did feel like I wanted to lean into actually what it would be like to actually work for a relationship rather than finding the out. Because I was really good before at finding the out. But this was like, well, I've always wanted to travel abroad. My girlfriend, our relationship at that time was like going well. So why not give it a try? So I was like, okay, well, I'll do the MBA. I always want to get a master's anyway. Let's do it. So it's definitely much more of a heady response. That was the default. But when you said that, the truth is there was a calling that I didn't hear, but I heard. It was more of an intuition of more becoming myself, and it kind of really comes back to the Dr. Seuss quote you started us off with. And I'm thinking about there was a deeper calling to allow myself to break away from that. I didn't even know it was there. It was loud and quiet at the same time. Because really, that was like the my first real initiation for myself to walk my path unknowingly. So yeah, man. Yeah, it's good to go back down memory lane.
So you moved to Spain in what year?
That would have been 2012.
2012. Wow.
Yeah.
And what year did you meet your wife?
Um, what year? So we have our 5th year anniversary next Friday, wedding anniversary. We've been together a little over 8 years, so that would have been like 2015. No, I'm lying. My math is all wrong. Yeah, 2015.
And do you think when you met her, you were showing up fully living your truth? There was nothing really that you were kind of like, this is my representative type deal, like we do a lot in dating, where it kind of, the first 6 months or so is like, this is like my representative.
Man, this feels like taxi cab confessions, like but virtual. So, no. So at that time, it would have been a yes. I would have said yes because I made a very conscious decision to once the ex I went to London with for that broke up. I made it very intentional to take space for myself. So I was single for about 3 years. So after dating, freely, and I'm meeting my wife, I was like, okay, cool. Like this feels like the one. Like I feel ready. Like I got it out of my system. I gave myself space to kind of do what I want and be kind of a free spirit, make my own decisions. Like I feel ready right now on a superficial level, but getting into the relationship and then approaching marriage, um, that's when I realized that I was still definitely playing. I was still hiding. There's so many masks around like what it meant to show up like as an embodied man, as the man I had in my mind. Um, and I was definitely showing like a representative of that. That wasn't really like to my core. And it's such a fragile representation because I was showing it because I wanted the validation. I was carrying so much guilt from like past relationships of like how I showed up and the hearts that I broke. Like I was like, no, look at me, I'm this great man now. I'm husband material. Don't you see it? Like, and I wanted those cookies. I wanted the gold star, you know. And then when she didn't give it to me, that's when it was revealed, like, oh, like that little boy wants to kick off because he's not being seen right now because that representative isn't being validated. So yeah, like the initial stage, I felt like I had it, but going into the into the relationship, it became revealed that I was still had a representative at play.
I love that. And I love that you were able to work through that and you guys are still together and your relationship is kind of taken on a new dimension. And I see that in the way you're showing up now in your offerings
Mm-hmm.
in doing couples relationship retreats. And I think you could really only do that and create an impact if you're the embodiment of that yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's like you're walking the talk. So, in relating to yourself and then, being a men's coach for how long have you been a men's coach before you were a couples coach?
Yeah. So 2 years before I switched over to men who are in committed relationships or want to be in one, and then couples. So couples is still relatively new, owning that for just under a year now.
Okay. And when I talk about relationships, I just want to let the audience know like I'm talking about relationships not only to your partner, but the relationship to yourself.
Yes.
So, what I'd like to lead off with is why do most relationships suffer? Not just the relationships to your partner, but the relationship with yourself. Why do most relationships suffer?
Man, big point you brought in there. That's really big. And I mean, short answer is my truth is that we don't have a solid relationship with ourselves. That's the short answer. A little bit more elaborate answer. If I look at my experience and the work that I do with couples, because essentially that's like the work, whether it's just with men who want to be in committed relationships or the couples, is the work is relating with themselves first and then coming together. And when we aren't clear on what our boundaries are, what our needs are, how we like our needs to be met, what do we actually need, is a need or a want, then we start projecting all these things and putting these big expectations on our partner that they can't meet. Now, most of us, we start off at least with the best intentions and we want to make our partner happy. We want to make them be lit up. We buy gifts, we do romantic gestures, and we want to be that person for them. But over time of trying to shapeshift and be that person, be that the end all be all for that person, it's exhausting. We can't be the end all be all. We can't be all things. That's one thing we got to understand. And the second part is if I don't understand like what I really need, I can't clearly ask my partner or a friend or a brother or a coworker. I can't ask anyone exactly express that. And so I feel like I'm saying it, but when they would give me the best effort, I feel like, just didn't hit the mark. And I start feeling like they don't really understand me. They don't really see me. Maybe they're inconsiderate. Maybe they don't care about me. And that's not the accurate story. It's the accurate story is I don't know how to express that and share that. And they're only giving me the best effort, you know?
Yeah. So what do you think an actionable step is for someone to work on themselves? And would you recommend that they do the work on themselves before, say, creating
Hmm.
a Bumble profile or a Hinge profile and going out there into the market, right? And
Yeah.
you're creating this avatar of yourself of, who you want to be or who you might think someone will think you are, and then 6 months down the road you're with someone and they don't even know who the hell you are because
Yeah.
your needs haven't been met the whole time. You've been trying to do whatever they say and you're shapeshifting into whatever they thought you were in the beginning,
Yeah.
right? And it's
Yeah.
like they didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's your
So,
misrepresentation of yourself.
yeah. Yeah. Big one, big one, big one. So the answer is yes. Yes, you can. I'm going to take the shit out of that. I'm going to say, yes, you can do your own work before you get into any kind of committed relationship. And yes, you can set up a profile. Yes, you can engage in a committed relationship with someone without being whole, without feeling like you're whole and complete, but also having some kind of awareness of where you need to do your work. Because I'm in a committed relationship. I've been with my wife for going on 9 years now. As I mentioned, next Friday we'll celebrate our 5th year anniversary. And I'm far from a perfect representation of how I want to show up. Far from it. Far from it. Um, However, where I feel that I serve myself and my wife in this is I do have a decently high awareness of where my pitfalls are. Right. Like I know I still fall for the trap of wanting her time, her affection in a certain kind of way. Like my love language is quality time. And when I don't get it, like even though I'm aware that's my thing, I need that thing. If I don't get it, I don't feel loved. And that still spins me off. Even at this stage, even supporting other people. Right. So what I'm saying that to say is so at least I know like if I spin off of that example, I can bring myself back in and say, okay, Brian, is it that she doesn't love you or she doesn't care about you? Or is it just that she happened to not give you that specific thing that you need at the specific time that you wanted it and now you're freaking out? I was like, yeah, that sounds more true. So I can take that story back of not making my wife the bad guy or the bad gal and start going down this dark tunnel, this rabbit hole of like why we shouldn't be together and why maybe there's grass is green on the other side and all these other things. So, you know, but this actually really goes back to what we touched on, I think, just before we kicked record. Another philosophy that I live by and also introduce in relationships is that we're going to fuck this up. There's no right way to do this. Like, there's no right way to do my life. I have no manual. No one gave me, Brian, follow these steps. This is going to be your path and do that thing. And when you bring two souls together who have their own lives, their own stories, there's no manual, a specific manual for these two people to get it right. So give it your best shot. Give it your best shot. I'm very hesitant to say like the point in time when in fact you should step into it. That's because you have to be an honest decision for yourself to say, you know what? Am I willing to be adaptable? Am I willing to listen? Am I willing to own my stuff? Am I willing to understand what their needs are without taking it personal? Not that I won't take it personal, but am I willing to do that? Those are some good signs that you perhaps are in a good position to step into a relationship. And even if you don't tick these boxes, who am I to say you're not ready? I don't know. Maybe you need to do that. Maybe you need to go in there and like throw a stick of dynamite and then blow the whole thing up. I don't know.
I love it. Yeah. And one thing is not to theorize this for the audience who's not in relationship. I think when you're not in a relationship, it's easy to theorize, oh, I'm never going to get in a relationship again. I'm never going to put myself out there again. And it's not until you're actually in relationship relating to where you can
Mm-hmm.
really open up and see, oh shit, like this is it, right? I'm being triggered right now. Why am I being triggered? And like so many people don't know how to deal with those things that come up with them in the moment, and they storm out, they lash out, passive aggressiveness,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps because they're in a relationship where their needs aren't even being met.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
the healthy communication part just doesn't exist.
yeah.
And it's like, shit, well, that's where the work needs to be done. And why are you throwing in the gloves on this relationship when you can actually just lean in and
Yes,
surrender
yes.
to like this beautiful thing that you have in front of you where you can relate with someone? And I think a lot of people don't know how to fight fair. I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people don't have established boundaries. And can you talk a little bit about how important boundaries are, but also like what does fighting fair look like to you, like with healthy conflict? Like healthy conflict is so important in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
People avoid that.
Yeah, give me some context of where you're coming from when you say fighting fair. What does that look or feel like for you?
For me, it would be like if someone was gaslighting you and you had an actual
Mm.
feeling,
Mm-hmm.
and
Got
someone
it.
is kind of dismissing that, saying, "You're not feeling that."
Mm.
You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's like you're not being validated, but to fight fair, to be like, "Hey, did you just gaslight me?"
Mm.
And laughing about it and being like,
Mm.
"Oh yeah, I didn't realize that." You know what I mean? Like that's
Yep.
kind of like where I look at fighting fair, to where it's like you have a trigger, the other person has a trauma, you're able to navigate through it in a conscious space.
Yeah.
But things happen so quickly,
Yeah.
we're like, I'm fucking out of here. Like, you're
Yeah.
too much,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Thank you for that. And I think where I'm getting stuck on, honestly, like my gears are like kind of grinding. Like something doesn't like the idea of fighting fair, like in a relationship context. So kind of get my head like to really taking the essence of what you're speaking into, and I think I got it. And yes, absolutely. So to me, like to go down that thread, it is going to feel like a fight, and there will be real, actual like argument fights, and there will be real like tensions in there. But there's also going to be a fight of my internal dialogue and your internal dialogue, right? And somewhere in this path, we need to understand like those two internal dialogues, so that way, when if I understand your example correctly, we share this information. I know something about that you're going through, a trauma, a wound, a pattern, whatever it may be, that I'm not using that against you. So to me, the fair fight would be like you said, like laughing about it. You know, in the context of where this may come up, because it may not like, so the fair fight for me would be a reflection, or let me take your hand and say, hey babe, like, are you doing this thing, or is that thing that we talked about, or whatever it may be, in a supportive way. So to me, that would be like a fair fight, where I'm bringing it to your attention about what I'm seeing, about how you're showing up, not to make you wrong, not to make you guilty, not to get something from you, just to say, hey, like we talked about, like this is where you want to work. Is this showing up right now? And that way you can take this information and say, oh shit, you're right. I was gaslighting you. I tend to do that, don't I? I tend to pass blame. I tend to exaggerate the situation to fulfill my story. Like, and yeah, and then laugh about it. Um, but then that does tie into what you talked about before, where you plugged into is the boundaries, So having those clear boundaries of when is it okay for you to to have that fair fight, to have that reflection. Because although it may be well intended, I may not want your damn reflection right now. Do you know what I mean? I actually kind of want to be in this kind of like gaslighting kind of energy, or whatever I'm going through right now. And maybe now's not the time. From establishing those boundaries, we may say, okay, once we're out of it, you may say, hey, like, I don't know, let's say a blanket half hour afterwards, after I've had my space to process, you can come bring that to me. But without having an established boundary, you may step in wanting to offer me something, a gift, and I might want your damn gift. It's like I'll say it. It's not to if anyone. It's like Jehovah's Witness knocking at my door. I didn't want you at my door, but maybe you have something to offer me about life and the path of Jesus Christ, right? But if I'm not looking for that right now, I may slam the door in your face. Okay. But if we establish that, hey, I do want that thing, and you bring it to me, I'm like, cool. I'm more willing to receive it. So,
Yeah. And just to kind of expand on that, how important is it to ask for what you need?
oh, brother, it's essential and crucial. And as I mentioned, I just came back from a week retreat from mainland Spain, and that's one of the biggest. I want to say it's a realization because it's something I knew about myself, but it became very clear about not asking for what I need. And let me be more specific. So, with our marriage right now, we're in a very trying time. I'll be honest. Like it's difficult. It's very difficult for me. I won't speak for my wife, but for me, it's very very difficult. It's challenging, and I've been in a position to really ask myself some really hard questions and give myself some honest, hard answers. And I was avoiding these hard questions because I don't want to give myself a hard answer because once I know, I can't unknow it. And then the way I operate, I have to do something with that. And so some of that what was coming up around asking for what it is that I need is around more intimacy practice, and more actual sex, more intercourse. And creating a sacred space for us to have more open conversations, which to me is the intimate part. Like those are big needs for me. And for such a long time, I wasn't asking for those because when I attempted to ask for those before, whichever, how it came out or how it was received, I didn't feel like it was well received on my wife's side. So I learned to stop asking because I thought, okay, well, she's not in a place to hear my needs right now. She can't hold my needs right now. She can't be with that right now. So I taught myself to stop asking to suit her, which is great. Well intended, right? Well intended. I don't want to cause my wife more stress. She has some health issues that are a bit challenging for her right now. So I don't want to cause more stress for her. But what I did for myself is I told myself that my needs didn't matter. I told myself that my needs weren't worthy. And I reinforced that deeper wound that I have that I'm not enough. And what else started happening with my wife is I started resenting her. I started making her the bad gal because the things that I wanted, that I needed from her in this marriage, I wasn't getting from her. But I also stopped asking. I stopped figuring out different ways to ask. I stopped trying to be creative of how can I present this in a different way. Again, like I just said to you, maybe I'm not respecting the boundary to present my needs to her. Was I being aware of, is this a good time for her to hear my needs right now? Or was I saying, I need this, I want this, and here, I'm throwing a hot potato at her. And she's like, hey, dude, like, not trying to catch that, So on the back of this retreat, like really coming back and seeing where it is, I have not been asking for my needs, and it's not her fault that I haven't been asking. However she reacts to that, that's on her, a different story. My responsibility is to at least deliver and express those needs in such a way that I am heard and she has the opportunity to do something with it. But if I don't give her the chance to do anything with this, and then I'm mad at her and I'm resentful for her for this, that's not fair for her. It's not fair for me. So big, 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 big.
Yeah, I love that. And I think about when Jetty talks about this, where he got into a disagreement with his wife, and it's almost like reclaiming your sovereignty. And when you're reclaiming like part of who you were, it's like you're starting a 50-year war with your partner because it's like, well, you showed up like this for this long, and now all of a sudden you want this,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, where was that the last year, 2 years, and it's not, it's something that compounds over time, but it could also be death by a thousand cuts, right? Where it's just like, you're just like on your back here, like asking for what you need. And it's like, well, you haven't been asking for it for
Yeah.
however long. And I love how you talk about like, how you feel is not my responsibility when you do establish boundaries for what you do need, and how people have a difficult time with like your partner's reactions, or you might go into that people pleasing part of you,
Yeah.
like, oh, I didn't mean that, you know what I mean, like.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just like I really love how you lean into boundaries and establishing that.
Yeah. And Brian, it's like, you brought up a beautiful point. I'm glad you did, because and the point is why didn't we ask these needs before? And that's a common trap where we may not help each other or allow each other to feel safe in that. If for a lot of reasons, because we didn't ask the first time, we now feel like we no longer have the right to ask ever again. And so we just sit with this thing forever. It's something that's very important to us, something we're kicking ourselves in the ass for. Then we feel guilty for asking now. Then we feel childish. We feel stupid. We feel dramatic, all these different things, and we don't ask for the thing again. But coming back to, having these boundaries of perhaps a boundary I'm sorry, not the boundary, but creating a sacred time and space where it's like, oh my gosh, I don't want to say amnesty, like a truce, right? You come to this space if it's a truce, and God, we can pull out anything in this space. Like let's just clear some things up along the way. And this is a big thing. Like when you talked about some of the biggest challenges that couples struggle with, is not being able to have a version of their relationship die off and be reborn again, to go through that process and sprout some new sprouts, right? There's different reasons why, I didn't say the thing, or I didn't do the same thing. I would do something a certain kind of way. There's a reason why. And we're assuming that we both, like, used to ask me, well, Brian, when you met your wife, like almost 9 years ago, did you feel that you were like whole, complete, and without representatives? And I thought I was, but then life showed me I wasn't. So that pressure that we put on each other to come in and maintain this image as if we're a freaking politician or something, like, to be the same person who doesn't change, doesn't evolve ever, isn't unfair, and it doesn't create safety. It's stagnation. If it's suffocating. This is why you have people who want to offer a different kind of experience, a food, a trip, or whatever, and we want to do it because we're maintaining this image that we first start off with. And there's so much more richness to like what our experience is, but we're not allowing ourselves to do that. But again, as soon as you realize that you have something different and new in your being, you got to share it. Whether you believe they're going to accept it or not, receive it or not, like it, agree with you, that's up to you to share for yourself and for them. And I know it's easier said than done, because like you said, people pleasing going to come in. That the fear of abandonment is going to come in. The fear of rejection is going to come in. That wound of, am I going to be enough? Will they receive me? I don't want to get left. Let me just swallow this, So much comes up in that, but it is that practice of being your authentic self and being able to share that stuff from a place of love, which is going back to your point. The relationship starts with us first. If I can't take a stand for myself, who else can take a stand for me?
Yeah, I totally feel that. And, just, you need to, I think, do the work when things are going well, not when the house is about to burn down. And I think a lot of people don't understand that, right? And it's like, all right, well, did I deal with my shit, or did I just like disregard this relationship and now I'm going to get something shiny over here? And it's just like the same patterns keep playing out, right?
Yes. Man, so good. So good, so good, so good. Like that also, down that thread is a really big one that a lot of couples, again, really miss out on. But being able to come in, again, and start that fresh slate and be able to see yourself from a different light, and to be able to see the whole thing like from a standpoint of how would I like to be seen in this? Like, so whatever I'm moving through, would I like them to how do you say, receive me, encourage me, to give me that space to be clumsy, to mess it up, because I'm not perfect. I'm on the same path as you are. So if I know that my best intentions, I've hurt people, like I have broken hearts, like in a million pieces, and that was not my intention. Is it possible that this person who's done this thing that hurts me, is it possible that that actually wasn't their intention? Is it possible? And more often than not, it is possible. But we cling on to the story that fulfills my fear of, they're going to hurt me. They're going to break my heart again. This is why I need to stay closed, right? As opposed to giving that more space and saying, you know what? I didn't hurt these people with intention. It wasn't I didn't wake up one day and say, I'm going to crush that woman. Just unfortunately it happened. So is it possible that that's the same thing happened with them? And so, yeah, that space is so necessary.
And I love your wording of intentional union, and we're going to get into your offering here in a little bit. I want to go back to another quote. Sometimes people don't want to hear the truth because they don't want their illusions destroyed, and that's Nietzsche, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
for me, as a man, why is it
Mm.
so important for us to have clear vision and consistently work on our purpose in relationship?
Yeah. Man, let that sink in. Because I'm still with Nietzsche quote. Like, I really like that. Um, as a man, it's my belief that, and as it comes to relationships, we need to lead those, not to be confused with dominating or dictating, or to treat it like like your word is the only word. But we need to be able to carry that energy to lead the direction of the relationship. I believe that wholeheartedly. Okay. So without having a clear vision of where you want to lead yourself, let's just go back to self. If you don't, I don't know how I want to like show up in the world. It's gonna be very difficult to understand what is the vision for this relationship. Like not necessarily like what are we gonna do in 5 years, 10 years, like 20 years. I mean, you can add those details, especially if it pertains to like financial goals. If you're here to acquire, masses of wealth and things like that, I can see that. Or if you want to plan for kids or plan for your new house, yes, those very specific goals are there. But what I'm more interested in, and what I like to work with my couples with, is what is the feeling of this? Like, what is the vision of your feeling? Like, when you have conflict, what do you want that to look like? If you've discovered something about yourself that is very different than what your partner, well, in this case, that's from the man's vision, that your wife didn't know about you, how would you want to share that? And how would you want her to receive that? To me, those things don't come into conversation enough of the feeling of it. And we tend to get very stuck on the more tangible, practical goals and visions of a relationship as opposed to the feeling of it. And the feeling of it is what dictates if we're going to actually acquire these goals or not. So as a man, if I'm able to say, how do I want to show up? When, not if, but when my wife pisses me off, whether it's her fault or not, right? I don't care about whose fault. Like when you get triggered, let's just say that when you get triggered, how do you want to show up and express that pain, that hurt, that disappointment to your wife? Because if you don't have that baked in, you don't have that imprinted, somewhere in your mind, in your heart, in your soul, you're going to go to your default. And your default's going to be, well, I'm going to retreat. I'm going to bite my tongue. I'm going to people please. I'm not going to share my needs. Or you may flip the other side and go to, I'm going to be pissed. I'm going to scream. I'm going to shout. I'm going to seek that validation I'm looking for outside the relationship because you have not imprinted that vision of yourself in that marriage, And I really encourage my couples to really go to like the dark part of those experiences. Like what was your worst fights and arguments and breakdowns that you've had before, whether it's with this current partner or not? Let's go there. How would you have liked to shown up differently? How would you like them to have shown up differently? The best way you can describe that. So that way, when you guys come together in this sacred time, this sacred space, you can share that to the best of your knowledge. To say, hey, remember that last time, like last week, like you did that thing and I screamed at you? Like I got in your face and I screamed. I'll be honest with you, I scared myself when I did that. And I'm telling you now, like, that's not okay for me. I know you forgave me. And I know you said it's water under the bridge. I know you said we moved past that. But I want you to know that is not okay for me. That is not how I want to show up as a man in this relationship for myself or for you. And my commitment, my promise to you is I will be much more aware of that. And so if I feel that coming up, I'm going to give myself 5 seconds, 10 seconds to bring that energy down before I open my mouth. Whatever that looks like for you, right? Likewise, or if you're on the receiving end of that, hey, remember last week when I forgot to pick up dinner and you got my face and you screamed? I just want to let you know that's not okay for me. Like, I understand that you had a long day. I understand you're under a lot of pressure. I get there's a lot of things going on, and I don't want to make you wrong for that. But I want you to know that for me, that is not okay. And so if you don't have a way to move through that, my ask of you is this, that you take 5, 10 seconds to really bring it down and just share with me as calm as you can what's moving through you so that I can maybe meet you halfway. So perhaps I can fix it or whatever that conversation looks like. But being able to have that vision of what it looks like for both sides is like the pace car in a race. Like you guys get to come back to that common ground. But without it, your default is whatever. And so if your default hasn't been effective in previous relationships, then you're going to keep repeating that cycle. So yeah, that solid vision is essential as well.
Right. And your failed vision is not her responsibility. I heard you talk about that as well.
No, not at all. Not at all. And so what'll happen is when we're not clear on how it is that I want to show up, number one, how I envision us showing up together, again, very different than dictating that. So I may have a vision of my marriage, but I'm not going to say, babe, I have a vision of how you're going to interact with me, and I'm going to interact with you, and we're going to do this, and you're going to like it. That's not what I'm saying. It's about at least saying that, expressing that to her, and enrolling your wife, like getting her on board with that. Because if it's a solid vision, she'll almost gladly follow behind it if she feels that you are solid and clear on it, right? So without having that, what'll happen is we tend to, things aren't working out the way we wanted them to be. Again, let's go back to intimacy. Let's go back to sex. Let's go back to money. Let's go back to how we raise our kids. These are some of the common things, the common breakdowns if you have kids, or just, let's leave the kids out for a moment. Sex, money, let's say even throw religion or social life are some of the things that almost everyone's going to experience in a relationship. So if I'm not clearing that vision and I'm not getting that experience that I want, and I'm going to point the finger at my wife, it's not her responsibility. She's not the visionary in most cases. She will definitely add to it. Her essence, her being, and how she has the ability to dream and really add more color and texture to my vision is necessary. But if it's not panning out as I expected, I can't make her the bad gal about it. And I will. Most of us will. And I have for a long time. Actually, this is another realization that came through of this retreat that I came from. Is like really being able to own and take responsibility for where I haven't been leading as strong as I thought I was. I did a damn good job. I'm not going to totally like take it away because I'm proud of myself. Like I really leaned in the best way I knew how, because again, remember we talked about, I have no manual how to deal with this, how to deal with like not being able to have kids and my wife's health issues and me not feeling adequate in my professional life and feel like I'm not, there's no manual to deal with this stuff. So I did the best I could at that time. But now this new information, this new reflection is like, but you know what? You got lazy. And I own it. No judgment in that. I got lazy. I stopped reinventing how I wanted to lead. My vision was outdated. I didn't let the vision evolve with where we were going. And there was a time before this retreat, I was definitely had a lot of fingers pointed at my wife. It's easy. It's easier that way. You do this. I don't have to do anything about it. It's like, until you do, then I'll be happy. I don't have to change. So coming back on the back of that, I can say, oh, right. I get to go back and claim this again. I get to go back and step in the ring, different, refreshed. I get to really see where it is I've been outsourcing my happiness, where it is I've been outsourcing my needs, where it is I've been outsourcing the vision, hoping that, if you're going to say no to my vision, then it's up to you. Go for it. Well, why am I not being creative enough? Why am I giving myself enough space to try again, to mess things up,
I love that. And I think as men, we don't ask for support when we need it. And how does that manifest when there's unmitigated emotional stress, when there's so much on your mind, right? You're juggling so much with career, with a million different things that you might not even share with your partner. And it's like, that's where the breakdown in communication leads to passive aggressiveness, just the polarity changes where it's just you're more of like a roommate after a period of time. And that's not her fault. That's your fault for not co-creating something that's beautiful, and it's there's a point where I think people just give up or throw in the towel or just settle for something mediocre. So for the audience that's not in relationship, I want to kind of switch gears to men's work and what that means to you. Because if you're unfamiliar with what it is and you have a friend group and you're getting biased opinions, say, of a relationship, and you're just having all these false narratives of what it is to be a man, of what it is to relate, of how to show up in this world, and you don't know anything about what's really going on with all these other organizations that embody what it is to be a man. Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of brotherhood?
In terms of brotherhood, so so now we're stepping out of the relationship aspect and just in regards to brotherhood, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I'm going to use us as an example. Because I think it's a beautiful example of when you and I met for the first time. We met in a container to do Compass, the fasting through Rising Man. And there's overlapping reasons of why it is that we came together, the journey that we were on to do the fast. And in this coming together and establishing something that looked like brotherhood to satisfy our needs, our own personal mission, you and I had some friction. We missed the mark. We misinterpreted the intentions of each other, and things are starting to feel weird and awkward, right? Not because you were trying to or I was trying to. It's just we had two different experiences that we were living out. Two things that we wanted to accomplish, and things were getting weird. So why am I saying that? I'm saying that because I think far too often men are I don't want to say afraid, but they tend to avoid being in space with other men because they're afraid of the friction. They're afraid of like the two bucks like clashing horns and getting them locked in and digging in. We'd rather not do that. Typically, I think wholeheartedly, most men don't want to do that. So we avoid it. I don't want to be awkward. I don't want to go through that phase of like trying to figure out the relationship and what the guy's thinking. So we avoid it. But to me, on the other side of that is a beautiful example of what's happening here right now. Us coming together, like we moved through that. We understood it. Oh, wow. Okay. So this is what was being said. That wasn't the real truth. This is how it's being interpreted, which wasn't the truth. And we move through that, and we have a brotherhood, which we feel very, very supported in. I know I can call you. Shit, we even met up in Costa Rica together. We're ziplining in the jungle together. Do you know what I mean? Like so there's so much magic and richness that comes to life when you get into a space when you're willing to, again, have that friction, butt heads from a place knowing that you both are just trying to figure it out, right? And then be supported on the back end of that. So for me, I've been in men's work for almost 5 years now, and I've been part of the Rise Man community for around 4 years. And I will always have some kind of men's group around me, always. Why? Because they have been supportive in me through all of my hardest times for the past 5 years. All of the hardest times I've gone through, I've had the support of men to just listen to me, to reflect things back to me that I'm not seeing, like to really challenge my complacency, to really challenge, am I really leaning in like I say I'm leaning in, but from a place of love, not because I need to do a song and dance for them. Like, it's not about me proving myself to them. It's not about me, living up to their standard. It's about me saying, hey, fellas, I'm stepping into this space. This is what's important to me. This is what I'm fighting for. This is what's alive for me right now. The rest, you guys help me out with that, And so having that to me has been instrumental in how it is I moved through my marriage as well. Because I can imagine, I don't even know what this would look like if I didn't have a men's group right now, to be honest with you. I honestly can say, I don't know for a fact, but I probably would have already gotten divorced like 3 years ago. 3 years ago, I would just say, fuck it, I'm out. Like, damn, I tried, did my best. I would have convinced myself I did my best, and I would have been out. Because there's some really hard times, moving through the emotions and confusion and frustration. But every single time, I had my men around me to hold that space, to hold me in my mind, mostly virtually, mostly to allow me to vent, mostly allow me to get that stuff out so I'm not dumping it on my wife. Because if I didn't have a men's group, she would have got it. That would have triggered her some stuff. Probably said some stuff I didn't, I would have regretted later. Probably would have trust would have broke down, safety would have broke down, and I probably would have been out. And again, although I can't say that for sure, and I'm not saying it's impossible. It's like you have to have a men's group to have a successful marriage or life. I'm not saying that, but from my experience, like as much as I can project that out, like definitely save my marriage and save my life to be the best version I can and be willing to lean into that. So yeah, that's my truth on that.
I love you sharing that, and that's kind of how I wanted to tie it in. In these containers, there's successful men, there's men in marriages, there's men with children. You're getting all different kind of mirrors back to you. So, in relationship, if you have a struggle or a challenge and you share it with the guys at the bar, right? The guys down the road, your buddies, you're going to get something very biased. In these containers, we're calling people forward. We're not calling them out unless they need to be called out, but we're calling you forward, or we're showing you how you might not realize you're showing up and how we see you, right? Why are you playing so small, right? And it's like people don't really appreciate and acknowledge and witness people in day-to-day interactions. And it's funny because I came into this space during the pandemic, right? And I just got my teeth kicked in about like, what does it mean to be emotional, right? And it's just like getting that reflected back to me. I'm like, what the hell do these guys talk about? I would go to the gym after the calls and be like, they don't know what are they talking about emotion? And to give the audience context, me and you met in California two years ago, and I heard someone say, "Never waste a good trigger," right? And you triggered me, and I don't know why, but you just did, and you didn't think you were just being yourself. But there was like this weird energy, and it's like we've laughed about it, we talked about it, and it's just like so stupid, and it's just like, but there was an energy there, there was a movement of something, right? Something
Yeah,
had to
yeah,
move,
yeah, yeah,
and the
yeah.
movement of that caused us to deepen our friendship. And yeah, we were
Yes.
waterfall rappelling in Costa Rica,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
right? And like we
yeah,
got together and broke bread in real life, and I got to
yeah,
meet your family and your brothers, your
yeah,
mom. It was
yeah,
awesome.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's it, man. And I just think of how many times when, again, how many times we feel that energy, that trigger, and we go right to the story. This guy's arrogant, obnoxious, an asshole, whatever it is, and we leave it at that. And that's this, and I find in most cases that's rarely the full story, even the real story. It's just my story because something happened in that exchange, you know. But because of this container that was meant to build brotherhood, we were able to play in that. It's like the gladiators arena. We're able to swing our swords in there, you know, like our energetic, emotional swords, and to actually see the truth in that and be supporting that process. And so, like, you know, I will live and die in a men's space. You know, I advocate it 100%. Again, I can't say it's going to be for everyone, and I say it's for everyone. You know, just gotta let yourself be in it.
Mm, thanks, Brian.
Mm, yeah,
So we have a couple minutes left. I want to talk about intentional union. I want to talk
yeah,
about what that means to you. I want to talk about this new Brian Jenkins
mm,
2.0, which
yeah,
I am so feeling right now.
mm, mm, yeah, yeah. Appreciate the the kind words and the space and the platform. So, man, intentional union is based on my experience. Put that out there right now. It's based on one, moving through my own grief and my own sorrow, my guilt about how I show up for past relationships. Um, I've been, the heartbreaker for many of those. I cause a lot of anguish and pain, and not knowing and understanding how to move through that, I carry those almost into every single relationship. So it's like always carrying a bucket of like poo, like into the next one, thinking it's not poo, but it's just there, like just continue the cycle. But the more dangerous piece to that is I kept telling myself of the man that I believe myself to be. And so I started to convince myself that I can't be trusted. Like I'm going to break a woman's heart. That's just, I have proof. I have evidence of that. Like I have, like, this is not me making it up. I have evidence of it. So it's a true story. And I believed it. And because I believed it so much so, that affected how I stepped into relationships. I was already kind of stepped in, like, like half in, half out, not showing the full me because if I showed the full me before, people got hurt. I don't want to hurt people. So let me just kind of hold that back a little bit. And so in that process, I recognized that essentially what I was doing is I wasn't allowing myself to really step into it and create this space with intention with my partner, right? Listen, let me not just come into this and say, yep, I feel ready to get into a relationship, or this worked in the past relationship. This is what I liked from my ex. This is what I didn't like from my ex. And my partner's doing the same thing. So we're just kind of bringing these things together and having conversations about, like, yes, what makes you happy? What makes you upset? And those things are great. It's great conversation builders. How many kids do you want to have? And how do you want to raise them? What religion? What schools? All those things are great. But what about actually coming into and building this unique union for you two? Like actually like getting down to the grassroots, the foundation, and getting rid of like how your parents did it, what you saw, how your friends say you should do it, what the all the top 5 magazines say you should do it. Like what is it? What if you just took bits and pieces of all these things and build your union? And that's where the inspiration came from, of actually being able to build that, knowing that there's no wrong way to do marriage. I don't believe that. I even say even in divorce, if your relationship led to divorce, well, I'm going to say in a lot of cases, maybe you didn't need to be in that relationship. So I don't necessarily say it's a bad thing. It's just, okay, great. Now you're not with the person that didn't make you happy. So find that person that makes you happy. Right. So knowing that there's no way you can do the relationship wrong, let's just build it together. Like step into space. What are you carrying? What has been a pain point for you in the past? And how did that show up for you? And vice versa. Man, how can I be supportive in your process? How can I support you on your healing journey while not sacrificing myself? Because I was really good at that. I was really good at that. I did that with my wife, like for a couple of years when, we found that she had this cyst on her uterus. She had some health complications. Like, and with my best intentions, I want to be there for her. I want to show up for her. But somewhere in there, I forgot about myself, you know? And so in that process is like moving through like the intentional union. Like, so I do that on a one-on-one basis with couples. And I thought like, so this time, and I think the one you're talking about is I'm opening up into a group format because I see so much opportunity in the shared experience. Because I've also noticed in, on our journey, our hero's journey that you speak of, it can feel like a lonely place sometimes. Like it's great being authentic. It's great living your truth, but sometimes that can feel lonely. At least for me, it has. Likewise, in relationships, sometimes we forget that we're not the only one going through these experiences. We're not the only one going through challenges. And just like I want to break down the taboo of just sharing my life experience about what that looks like, I also want to do the same thing for couples as well. To not have the shame or guilt. Let that be that thing that's in between you two. Let's remove it. Let's just have an open dialogue. And so we start building our union together in a group format, sharing our struggles, sharing our victories, sharing what's working, seeing the different kind of flavors that are out there. Because sometimes, like as you mentioned, it stuck with me, is we lose polarity. We get like this roommate kind of complex. So how do we break out of that roommate complex? You don't know what you don't know. But what if now you're in there with your beloved and you hear another couple on the screen? I'm like pointing as if we're in a room, like in a virtual room, and you hear their experience. You say, oh, I never even thought about saying that, doing that, looking at it that way. Thank you for sharing your experience because I'm going to take a little bit of that. I'm not going to model your relationship. I'm not going to do exactly what you do, but thank you for that inspiration. Let me take that and put that to our intentional union. So I'm really stoked about it. I'll be honest with you, I'm also nervous about it. This is the first time doing it in a group container, but I feel ready. And just like as the I guess the mantra, the motto that you like I'm really embodying right now is that I can't mess this life up. I can't mess this up. Things may not go off as planned. I'm okay with that. We're gonna create something beautiful together. We're gonna like move some energy and create some new bonds and new boundaries and really set people up for a union, a relationship that works for them, not their moms, not their dads, not their grandparents, not their cultures, but a union that really works for them. So yeah, stoked for it, as you can tell.
Thanks, Brian. And I think it's safe to say there's a large percentage of people out there who need work like this. And I know you have 3 pillars, and I don't want you to talk about all 3, but the first pillar of intentional union is kind of like an ego death almost, right?
Yeah, 100%. And we put that in there. I think we touched on this in the beginning of being able to start from a fresh start. And I tackle that number 1 because we need to be able to clear. If we need to, and however we start, like this ego death looks like, you may need to burn it down. You may need to take a weed whacker to it. You may need to take bleach. Whatever you need to do, we need to clear that up. And that comes from past arguments, past, things we're holding on to. We're going to address it. We're going to confront it with love and care. We're going to let that die away and let a new relationship like build from that. So yeah, essential.
I love it. Where can people find out more about you, Brian? Websites, social media handles? You want to share that with the audience?
Yeah, 100%. Thank you. So right now, the most up to date would be the Instagram, which is my name, Brian Christian Jenkins. You can go to the website for right now. It's in the rebuilding phase, so you're not going to get too much information on there. That's going to be up to date. So yeah, I'd say definitely IG is going to be the best way to reach me, or send me an email as well. That's Mr. mrbjenkins@gmail.com for any specific questions. But apart from that, there are YouTube videos. There's some content that's out there floating around to get a flavor of what the energy that I bring and how I approach this, because I do believe that there's a nuance to how I approach the relationship process. It's not about giving you just the tools for communication, the tools to have better sex. It's really showing you how to create your tools along the way. And it's more of the relationship with yourself. Like, I really want you to hold 2 complete wholes to be able to fully express yourself in the way you see fit at any point in time in that relationship. You feel like you can't, maybe that relationship is not for you, and that's also okay. But if we discover that, you can, find your flavor, your match with someone else. That's okay.
Love it. And hopefully we'll be breaking bread soon on a new adventure in real life soon. Don't know what it is, but it's always great catching up with you.
It kind of feels like you've done a lot in South America. Sounds like you need to kind of like pop your European cherry. You have a home here.
Yeah, no, I see a vision of the Canary Islands in the future for sure. Um, so thank you. Thanks again, Brian.
Yeah.
That brings us to the end of another episode. This is episode 4 of After the Peaks, and I just wanted to extend a heartfelt thank you to our incredible guest, Brian Jenkins, for sharing his valuable insights and experiences with us today. Until next time, keep spreading positivity, making a difference, and embracing the extraordinary in your own lives. Take care, and we'll catch you on the next episode of After the Peaks.
Oh, thank you.